Welcome to another episode from HenRefurb. This episode I'm going to restore the entire steering system, so stay tuned. Here it is. So I've got everything, steering wheel, the switch columns that go all the way down and control the switch which goes at the end. The switch is not here because it's very fragile and it's being kept away somewhere safe. Steering arm that controls the steering from the steering box, which is this one. That's obviously the whole column. Steering wheel sits on the top here. That bolts on the chassis there. That arm fits on there. The arm that goes between the left and the right wheel is on the chassis at the moment, just propped in there to help me move the chassis around, because without that I can't steer, because the wheels just, one goes left, one goes right. So I'll do that one at some point, but I'm going to start on the box, find out how that works, what goes on inside it, see if I can strip it down and clean it all up. Right, well I think that's as far as I can get now. That is completely stripped down to nothing but one piece now. The rest of it, you saw me take all those other bits apart. God knows how that goes together. I can't see anything because of all the grease. So I'm going to clean everything now as it is and then come back and strip it even further. So I'm just having a look at all of these little control shafts. I've given this one a bit of a wipe down just to get the grease off. There's nothing much that's going to need doing with these at all. The top, which is the lever that you obviously see as the driver sat there, just needs... I'm just going to spin that on the wire wheel and clean it up and put some paint on it, that's all. Nothing much else to be done with that. And then obviously these will all be re-greased and whatnot when they're put back inside the steering column. So this one's a bit more, I honestly can't remember which one's which. One of them does the throttle, the other one does the lighting. Possibly this middle one does the lighting, I'm not sure, but at least one thing I do know is that this one has the horn button on it, so you press that and the horn goes, and basically there's a wire that runs all the way through the middle of this. It's an incredible setup because there's a wire right down the middle that powers the horn. There's a rod here that controls the light switch, which is right down by the front wheels. There's a rod that goes around this one, a sleeve around this one that controls the throttle, so you can either rev the engine with your foot or with the little trigger on the throttle. Then of course you've got the steering rod that goes all the way down around the outside of those that controls the steering. And then the column. There's so much stuff that runs through the middle of this column. It's incredible. It's quite a fascinating design really. Anyway, this cable, or this wire, single wire that's come out here, is badly damaged at the end, so I'm probably going to have to get a replacement for that. Or rather just replace it with a new piece of wire, because it's no doubt going to short out or cause some damage at some point in its life, and we don't want that. So I'm going to see if I can strip this down and get that wire all the way out of it as well. Seems a strange bit of wire, but it's It's all wobbly. That must have been an absolute nightmare to feed down inside that. I mean, that looks to me like it was once a piece of twin that's been unwound and they've just put the single in, but cool. Yeah. I think it's possibly a bit rusty up there as well, so I might have to drag something through that can clean it, but I'll have a look at that when I've cleaned it up and can see it all better. So Ella wanted to help, so she's out there sandblasting the steering wheel. In the meantime, this thing is really loose and I'm going to try and tighten it up, but I'm going to use the lathe to do that. It seemed only fair to let Ella paint the thing that she's just restored. Could hardly take the whole project back off her. So it turns out that that big old column actually fitted in the sandblaster. So after I did what I did on the lathe, I sandblasted it. So now it's really clean. And then I'm going to spin it again on the lathe and just polish it back up. So I'm just soaking the threaded end of the column in thinners, which is going to wash out all of the grease that was in that joint where the thread is attached to the tube, because otherwise it's going to ruin the paint if I don't do that. And in the meantime I'm going to polish up some of these Bakelite bits. Bit nicer looking. It works well because it rips all of that paint off. There was all sorts of paint all over the top of this and I'm not sure it's meant to be there without actually doing any damage to this because it's so tough. Right, all these bits are now out the parts washer, so I've just dried them off. Everything's looking absolutely fine in here. You know, obviously there's some wear marks on these teeth, but they're not bad at all, so should have plenty of life left in those as long as we clean it all up and grease it and everything properly. I'm just going to wire brush now all of the loose bits that are left on there and sandblast any other bits that need sandblasting. This bit has been thoroughly washed and sandblasted, as you can see, ready for a coat of primer, which I'm going to do now. So then the only thing left is this other casting. Just needs a bit more degreasing because there's a bit left in there that I didn't get with the parts washer. Time to sandblast this one. Right, well this is now super clean, sandblasted, polished out, lovely, ready for paint. So I'm going to stick some primer on this one as well, and then we're getting close to actually being able to put the steering box back together. All of these bits are cleaned up and restored, they all look fine. There's actually nothing to do on this but reassemble it and get it readjusted. We're going to start with just doing the steering box. Got all the fixings and some brackets and bits and bobs. Two major castings, the shaft and the steering gear, and then the actual steering shaft that goes up through the column, which is all the way up there. And then the column tube is out in the barn, also cleaned up and painted, so that's ready to go too. Remembering what goes where is always fun. Normally I'm good. If I have any trouble, I've obviously got the video of me disassembling it to help, so it shouldn't be a problem, but we'll see. The first thing I need to do actually before I start assembling it is make a gasket for this joint here. So I'll go ahead and do that. The next thing I want to look at on the steering side is this big old arm here. So I've got to strip it to bits, get it through the parts washer, sandblast it, repaint it, and of course at some point assess the condition of everything, but hopefully everything will be fine. Nice to know that that critical steering component is missing the pin that prevents it from falling apart. So I'm going to have to work out if these are all in the correct order, because I'm not entirely sure if the two cups and the spring goes on the outside or off on the inside, because you've sort of got two cups that clamp against that ball. To be honest, actually looking at the shape of that, I imagine the spring needs to go on the outside because this ball needs to be on the inside, because that's kind of keyhole shaped there. So if the ball's on the outside, if you pulled hard enough, presumably it'll fall out. So also nice to know that it's been driven like that. I've been driving it like that. But anyway, I will check all of these things with the manual before they go back together, just to make sure they're actually done properly, because you can never be too sure. The bit that's missing at that end is this little piece, and what that does is you've got this end cap that goes in. This sits in the end cap like so, and you see there's a spike out each side which sticks into the tube that the end cap is screwed into and prevents the end cap from turning. And then what you do is you take this piece and you fold it down inside, and then you put that oil nipple in, and it prevents this retaining spring clip thing, if you like, from ever coming out. So I just need to make a new one of these retaining wires for this end. Fresh out the parts washer, you can now see all the bits. So we've got, well, the pitman arm, which is the thing that drops down from the steering box, which is there, down to this arm, which then runs along to the front right wheel, which is the control arm. So, and then you've got the cups that hold that ball in place, and then the spring and the adjustable screw, and then the oil nipple, and then obviously the missing piece, which is what this one has over here. And then this is basically the same layout of parts, but instead of the pitman arm, this one just has a ball joint, a felt seal and cover, and then the nut and cotter pin to go with it. So now I'm going to clean all these things up and paint them. Right, we now have a much cleaner, happier looking pile of bits. So all of these bits, I've cleaned them in a few different ways. A couple of bits, like the pitman arm here, went through the sandblaster as well, so that's super clean. This went through the sandblaster, and a couple of little bits, and just the tops of these caps, just to clean them out because they were full of grime that I couldn't get to. So sandblaster's very good at getting rid of bits like that. Now I'm going to make another one of those. Okay, so that's the new one, and that's the old one, and that just sits in there like so. So after a ton of mucking about, this lot is now all ready for a coat of primer. Got this arm cleaned up finally. It was absolutely chock solid with crud and grease and all sorts of things. It took me forever to get it cleaned out, but it is now completely clean and clear. And then, yeah, all these bits just need some of them, not all of them are getting paint, but some of them need primer on. Then I'm going to assemble it and then put the top coat as an assembly, I think. Whilst all of that paint's drying on the other parts, I think it's time to start having a look at the actual main steering arm, the one that goes between the left and the right front wheels. So basically it's just a big old bar and a ball joint on each end, but they just need stripping down, cleaning out and tarting up and made look like new again. Okay, so this lot's been through the parts washer and has also had a brush on the spinning wire brush. Good news is all of the important bits are in perfect condition, and the only thing I need to change is the cotter pins and these 4 nuts which have basically dissolved. So there's a few bits now I want to take through the sandblaster, like the main casting for example and the top of these caps, and then that will be ready for some paint. Just going to stick a quick bit of high build on the steering wheel so I can have that nice and smooth for when it's done. Okay, so we're in the spray tent now. We've got the steering column with the steering box and the pitman arm attached. Some bits and bobs there. This is the arm that goes between the 2 wheels, and then this is the arm that goes from the steering box to the front right wheel. And then of course the steering wheel, which is all nice and smooth now, having had a bit of high build on it. So I'm just going to get all of that covered in gloss black now. Right. Well, it's time to stick some steering bits on the chassis. Well, that's the whole steering system fitted now. So start at the left wheel. We've got the knuckle joints with the ball and the rod that links them together along there to the other one, and then there's a link rod from there to the pitman arm, which is attached to the gearbox, which goes up the column to the steering wheel, and there we go. And I've just popped in the steering wheel control levers. So the left one is for the lights, the right one is a hand throttle, but they're going to have to come out and be set up properly yet, but they're just in loosely for now. So it means that they're out of my way and I won't do any damage to them. There's so much stuff kicking around everywhere, it's just nice to be able to have somewhere decent to put something. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you've got any questions or suggestions, pop them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer. Next episode, I'm going to be restoring the brake master cylinder, the pedal and assembly that holds it all together. So, see you next time.